Okay, if I could have your attention, we'll go ahead and get started. Good evening, everybody. A little weak, but let me try it one more time. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Oh, thank you. That's much better. I don't normally use a lectern, but I'm a little bit under the weather, so I'm going to use it to prop myself up tonight. So I hope I'm not contagious with anything, but I know a lot's going around. now they're saying now you tell me so. But I want to thank you for joining us tonight for our community conversation about discipline and disparities. I want to thank our DE Board Steering Committee for hosting tonight's conversation and for all of their work on behalf of Knox County Schools. They're a great group. They work hard and they represent the community very well. I'd also like to thank Principal Seth Smith. I don't know if Seth's in the auditorium or not. Seth, where are you? Yeah, in the back there. Seth, thank you. We appreciate you hosting us tonight and making us feel real special and welcome. And I appreciate you and the work you're doing here at Fulton High School. Before I get too far into the remarks, I know we've got a couple of board members here I'd like to introduce. We've got Mrs. Evity Satterfield, District 1. So I appreciate Evity being here. Thank you. Also, Miss Christy Christie, representing District 9. Thank you, Miss Christie. And also, I think School Board Member-elect Daniel Watson. And yeah, so thank you for being here. We appreciate our board members being here. Did I leave anyone out? Carly back there, you see anybody I left out at school board? Sometimes we may have some others join us, so I'll introduce them if I'm still at the mic. But as you know, our district adopted a new strategic plan last year. And it has three goals, very simply stated. It's to increase student achievement, it's to eliminate disparities, and it's to create a positive culture. And, if we're going to increase student achievement, we have to eliminate disparities. And I'm not just talking about discipline disparities. There are disparities all across the board when you look at academics in terms of graduation rate, ACT scores, reading proficiency, absenteeism, chronic absenteeism, all of those factor into disparities in our school district. Of course, tonight we're talking and focusing primarily on discipline. But that strategic plan shows how seriously we're taking the work of eliminating disparities and the importance of supporting all students in the work of education. In a moment, Jeannie Delaney, who's our community liaison, will explain how tonight's meeting will be organized. But I just wanted to say, first of all, that our goal is to have a two-way conversation this evening. And I really appreciate everyone coming out. I know we tried this a couple of years ago. We didn't have very good attendance. We probably didn't advertise it as well as we should have. But I'm very pleased tonight to have the attendance, your attendance here. And maybe next time we'll do it, we'll even have more folks to join us, which will be great. But we'll be sharing some important discipline data, talking about the efforts we've made to eliminate disparities within our schools. But again, main thing is we want to hear from you tonight, and Jeannie will be talking about how we'll do that. We've set aside some rooms for some breakout sessions, so you can go to those sessions, and we would like to have your input. We'd also like to address questions that you might have. And I said this a minute ago. I want to acknowledge something right from the beginning, and that's that we didn't have a community meeting last year, and that was a mistake. Our goal moving forward from this point on is to do a better job of providing regular reports and progress and opportunities for community dialogue. So we'll do a better job in the future of sharing data with the community. Even though we didn't have a community meeting last year, I want to talk about some of the things that we've done. We've been taking some concrete steps to work towards the issue of eliminating disparities. And first of all, we've reorganized our central office to work more efficiently. And I would like to introduce Janice Cook. Janice, if you'd stand up. Thank you. Janice is our Director of School Culture, which is a new position, a new department. And again, if you're going to create and build a positive culture, it makes a lot of sense to have a department that's dedicated to doing that for us. And some of the work Janice will be doing, she'll be focusing on eliminating disparities within our schools. She'll be promoting restorative discipline, reducing absenteeism, and supporting social emotional learning. So a full-time job, and we know Janice is going to do great work there for us in that department. Also, and with us is Jason Myers. We named Jason Myers as Executive Director of Student Support. So, Jason, appreciate you being here. Appreciate your work. Jason's focusing primarily on special education, English language learners, and health services. And you might imagine health services has kept him quite busy over the last couple of weeks. Previously, all these policy areas were managed by one person, if you can imagine that. And Miss Missy Massey, who left us last summer, managed all these departments. But it's just a daunting job. It's overwhelming, really too much for one person to do. So now we feel like we're still not adequately staffed, but we do have more resources that we can dedicate to our goals, and they can focus on those. Janice wakes up every morning thinking about disparities and goes to bed thinking about disparities, and Jason goes to bed thinking about special ed and health services and English language learners. So again, people who focus on those jobs and do it for us every day and all day long. More recently, I've asked Brian Hartzell. Brian, if you'd stand, and I know you'll be presenting. So Brian Hartzell, Supervisor Transfers, also the Board's Disciplinary Hearing Authority. I've asked Brian to head up a team, and that will regularly monitor the data and meet with principals to discuss how the central office can continue to support their efforts and to address disparities. And we feel like by proactively monitoring discipline trends, our goal is to identify the challenges and the opportunities early on, and then provide efforts to address the disparities. So that's, I think, Brian, y'all have already been meeting, I understand, been out at schools and talking with principals, and we're going to continue to put a focus on that. Probably something we should have, again, one of those things we probably should have done earlier than this. But again, we're trying to identify the challenges and opportunities early on and work collaboratively with our principals to address them. In addition, we've recently hired an in-house facilitator to further develop and continue the work of cultural competency training and support for staff and students. As many of you know, phase one of our cultural competency training, it was began in 2018. Took us for the most part 2 years. The goal was to provide a foundational understanding of this topic for our staff. I think that worked very well. We outsourced that, but again, if one of your primary goals is to eliminate disparities, it made a whole lot more sense for us to try to restructure and do what we do from inside out rather than from outside in. So again, that was kind of the thinking in terms of when we sort of made the change here. And in fact, I'm happy to announce that Jay Butler, is Jay here? Jay here? Okay. All right, Jay Butler is our new cultural facilitator. She's on the job. She's begun scheduling and with training sessions for staff. We look forward to working with Ms. Butler, and I'm confident she's going to carry this forward with great skill and dedication. We've also have another position that we're dedicating to as a cultural facilitator. That person has not been hired yet, but will be sometime here in the near future. So the task of addressing disparities is complex, and one of the DEO's most important roles is to be the community's voice within KCS. At one level, the DEO meetings have created a setting where community leaders and district administrators can speak freely and openly about sensitive and complicated topics, and we have. At times, that means the community leaders challenge, and they do, the district, and urge us to do better. And we really appreciate the steering committee pushing us on issues. I know, just like for an example, I know in the discipline report, this is probably the fourth revision, I guess. We started out presenting to the steering committee, and lots of suggestions to make the data a little bit more user-friendly for you, and also to provide a little bit more data in a way that might make a whole lot more sense. But another equally important part of their job or role is to ensure that the public is kept in the loop, and that parents, families, and community advocates are able to understand and provide feedback about our efforts. So this is why we're hosting the community meeting this evening, for that opportunity. Our DEO members are always eager to hear the perspective of community members, and I think I can speak for our committee's co-chairs, Toma Battle, and Toma is here somewhere. I think will be here if she's not here yet. And Rosa Marr. Rosa, would you stand up? Let me introduce Rosa Marr. There's our co-chairs of the steering committee. And so I know they're always happy to meet with and discuss any important issues with you. And with that in mind, I'd like to ask our DEO members in attendance to stand and let everyone know who you are. So if you're on the DEO steering committee, please stand and let us give you a round of applause for your work. Okay. Thank you. As a district, we're also eager to hear feedback. We have public forum sessions at every board meeting. Our executive team is also available if you have a specific concern. Try to make myself available, and I've met on a couple of occasions with interested community advocates about the work we're doing and their concerns and so forth, and we'll continue to do that. So now I'd like to invite Phyllis Nichols to the lectern. Phyllis is the president and CEO of the Knoxville Area Urban League, and she performs a crucial role in the work of the DEO. So Phyllis is going to give us a brief summary of the steering committee's history. And as she comes to the lectern, I want to recognize her leadership and commitment and say thank you for her support. And we look forward to our continuing partnership, Phyllis, and I'll hand it over to you. So thank you.
Good evening. I want to say a special welcome to those of you in the audience who have been part of this process for quite a while. And so as I review the history, you can nod with me. But I want to especially say welcome to those of you who have never been to a community conversation, who are just learning about the Disparities in Education Outcomes Task Force. And we invite everyone, no matter at what juncture you step in, to participate. A brief history: in November of 2014, Knox County Schools Administration organized the Disparities in Education Outcomes Task Force, a very diverse and inclusive task force of 36 members representing business, school, students, community, and faith-based stakeholders. And our charge was to recommend strategies to address disproportions in academic achievement and discipline outcomes in Knox County schools that might be correlated with income, race, language, and/or disabilities. The thing that is most inspiring for community leaders is that Knox County Schools was willing to address an issue that large districts, diverse districts across the country are faced with. And so our work began in earnest in March of 2015. We had initial meetings that were focused on the review of a 2007 disparities report, which presented some data to the district demographics, discipline, and academic achievement outcomes. We also looked at policies and procedures that govern the discipline process. Monthly meetings focused on the review of the work since the 2007 report. Task force members analyzed the data, asked questions, discussed challenges, and ultimately developed a common understanding of the issues related to disparities. In December of 2015, the district and members of the task force invited parents, families, educators, and community members to participate in our first community meeting to share options, triumphs, and challenges with regard to their personal experience and any ideas to address disparities in discipline and education. An additional community meeting was held in April of 2016. There were additional opportunities for stakeholder participation. We also worked with 2 community forums, including the Push Out, Teach Out, and Save Our Sons initiative. Perspective and experiences from other districts was also gathered, and specifically we looked at 2 task forces, one in Los Angeles and one in Nashville. Our research on disparities in education outcomes and promising behavior from the field was shared and discussed, and we learned about positive behavior and intervention supports, social emotional learning, restorative justice, cultural competency, and alternatives to suspension. Throughout our process, every effort was made to ensure transparency and allow for ongoing comment and community dialogue. Our meeting agendas, our meeting notices, and community feedback was posted on the Knox County Schools website. In addition, an email link was provided for individual input. Our final report with recommendations from the task force was presented to the Knox County Board of Education in June of 2016. The board approved, and we moved forward in concert with Knox County Schools on 4 overarching goals. Number 1, redesign the KCS discipline practices and policy to eliminate systematic disparities in discipline that were based on race, ethnicity, income, language, disability, zip code, or other categories for potential discrimination. Another of our overarching goals was to include and emphasize restorative practice as an alternative to suspension and expulsion. Incorporate positive behavior interventions and support in every classroom, and also to cultivate a positive environment of mutual responsibility and self-advocacy. We wanted to enhance the capacity of our educators to provide high-quality instruction. We wanted to utilize the juvenile justice system only when necessary, and we wanted to ensure the academic growth and achievement for all students, especially those that were furthest behind. And so the task board made the recommendations that were approved by the board, which outlined a clear plan for strategies, timelines, and outlines. We asked for a steering and oversight committee to ensure accountability and fidelity to the plan. And we also asked for an ombudsman so that that role would report directly to the superintendent and be available to community concerns. And finally, that there would be a communications plan so that information would be sought and distributed to all those who needed to be informed. Where are we today? Well, progress has been made, but not enough to say disparities are no longer an issue. Are there still concerns? We are here tonight to make sure we continue our transparency and that we listen to you and that we work in concert with Knox County Schools.
Hi. Yes, I am standing. Everybody always makes comments about being too short. I am one of the co-chairs with Toma Battle, and my partner in crime is coming up right now. And I'm Rosa Mar, y yo estoy aquí para darles la bienvenida a todas las personas que no hablan inglés. Y quiero darles saber si ustedes necesitan traductores. Tenemos hoy y nos agradece mucho que todos estén aquí participando en esta junta porque se ve que ustedes, sus hijos y estudiantes son muy importantes. Y por favor, cuando estemos en las juntas separadas, por favor, hagan todas las preguntas que ustedes quieran y si no podemos darles la información, estoy aquí para decirles si ustedes But the good thing is I'm loud. I belong to the loud family. So all I was saying is, si necesitan ustedes que alguien, si tienen preguntas, por favor, sepan que yo estoy aquí para servirles.
I do not have a translation for that. All I'm going to say is welcome. Thank you for coming. Thank you for being here and continuing. This is an effort for us to give you an opportunity to share concerns, but please don't wait till a setting like this to make your needs, your desires, your concerns known. Okay? Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Just real quick, I've been informed, Miss Jennifer Owen. Miss Owen, where are you? Okay, there's Miss Owen. So, 2nd District, thank you for being here. Okay. It represents Fulton as well, as part of the 2nd District.
Gosh, Rosa, you were standing? I'm not sure. So the superintendent already mentioned me. I'm Jeannie Delaney, the community liaison for Knox County Schools, and as of April 1st, which I guess was sort of appropriate, April Fool's Day, I will have been there 5 years, and it's my favorite job ever, and I've had some great jobs because it just matters the most. So I want to add my thanks for y'all coming out tonight. This is a fabulous turnout, and we're glad you're here. I'm just going to explain how tonight is pretty much going to go, because we want to have the opportunity to hear from as many of you all as possible. So first, we're going to have some presentations. The first one will be by Brian Hartzell, who, as we have said, is over discipline and enrollment. Then Janice Cook will talk about school culture and supports. And then Tammy Campbell, our district ombudsman, will talk a little bit about what goes on in her office. After the presentations, we know that the best way to get information from you is in smaller groups. So we're going to do that in the following way. Those of you who want to interact even more around discipline data will stay with Brian. And in a little while, I'll tell you where all these will be. Those who want to hear more and provide feedback about school culture and supports initiatives will be with Janice Cook. Those of you who want to learn more about special ed and all the other things that Jason oversees will be with Jason. And those of you who want to interact with our ombudsman will be with Tammy. In all of these spaces, there will be a facilitator to sort of keep you on task and on time and make sure everyone gets heard. And there will be a scribe who will capture all of your comments, all of which will be typed up and posted on our website at knoxschools.org/DEO. And we'll remind you of all that later as well. This meeting is actually being live streamed on our KCS TV YouTube channel. And I think either now or very soon, the PowerPoint presentation you're getting ready to see will also be on our website at knoxschools.org/DEO. So now it is my pleasure to turn the program over to Brian Hartzell, who was going to talk to you about discipline.
Oh my goodness. Good evening. Thank you, Jenny, and thank you to everyone that have joined us this evening. This time I will like to say a couple of things as it pertains to how we view discipline and the discipline process in Knox County, understanding that our top two priorities are safety and our environment that is conducive to learning for all students. Before we dive into the numbers and the data that we present to you today, I want to let you know that any discipline that's dispersed from our administrative team here in Knox County, our main goal is to make sure that it does not affect our students academically. We strive to not suspend students. However, we offer them, for the most part, an alternative placement at our alternative schools. And please understand, I know the alternative school is not the same as the day-to-day classroom. However, it is at this time what we have to offer students that cannot conduct themselves in a manner that's conducive for learning for all students. Can everyone see the slide? All right, if not, yes, everyone should have received a packet. Does anyone not have a packet? Do we need to get you a packet at this time? Yes, yes. We ran out, okay. Okay, you can. It's on. Is it uploaded online already, Jenny? Yes, yes, so you can find it online. knoxschools.org/DEO. And I give everyone a few minutes to pull that up. All right, before we once again get into the slides, I'd just like to make it known that we understand as we look at our disparities and addressing those issues in disparities, our numbers are not where we want them to be. We started this process 3 or 4 years ago, and we've addressed it from a standpoint of trying to reduce the number of students being out of school and also the number of days that they miss from instructional time. All right, starting, if I'm not mistaken, in your handout, I believe it's page 4, and the slide before you here. This is a breakdown of our district diversity. As you can see, starting on the far left side of the sheet, at the very top there, you see the year. Then also up under that, you'll see the total number of students that are present in Knox County schools. And there's a ledger, a key over to the far right side that shows you the breakdown associated with the color coordination of each subgroup. And as you can see, if we go back to that slide, Josh, just 1 second. As you can see that from year to year that our diversity population has grown, not substantially, but there is some growth as it relates to our black population, our Hispanic population. Then as you move on over, Pacific Islanders, we've increased there, and also Native Americans we've increased as far as our diversity and population. Next slide, please. All right, the next slide. The next slide is a breakdown of our middle and high school out-of-school suspension incidents. Now, understand incidents is any reported record of a school where a student has been placed out of school for 1 to a larger number of days out of school. Now, understand that when we say incidents and records, that include multiple students many times. Okay, and as we go through the slideshow, you will see we will also show you a breakdown of student population and the number of students that were suspended in that population. We'll get to that slide somewhere around 9 or 10. But on this slide here on the left-hand side is our high schools, broken down by demographics. And then also on the left side on our right side is our middle school. Let me say that again. On my left side are the high school suspension rates, and then on the right side are the middle school suspension rates. And as you notice that our suspension rates in our high schools have sort of fluctuated up and down, whereas when you look at our middle school suspension rates, they've been gradually going up. Next slide, please. All right, once again, this is a breakdown of individual schools for the past 3 years, suspension rates. On the far left, I hope you can see it on your packet, but we start with Austin East on the far left-hand side and alphabetically go all the way to the end with West High School. As you can see, as I mentioned earlier, for the past 3 years, if you're looking at specifically at Austin East, you'll see a gradual increase in the number of records or incidents of suspensions. And as you look at the next school, which will be Bearden High School, you see the same trend. As you come to Carter High School, you see a seesaw effect where Carter's suspension rate was low, and then the suspension rate went up for the next year, and then it tend to reduce back down. And then you can look at the rate for the rest of the schools there. Next slide, please. Thank you. All right, this is the slide that I spoke of earlier where you can look at the suspension incidents per school for the 18-19 school year. For instance, at Austin East, I believe that's for African Americans, black students, there was 466 total students suspended. Hispanic, there was 17 students suspended, and then for white, there was 41 students suspended. And then if we scroll down to the area up under that, you would see of those 466 students suspended from Austin East, incidents at Austin East, that included 204 students. For the Hispanic, if I'm not mistaken, 11 students. Thank you. And then for the white students, there was 27 suspended from Austin East. And you can see the same thing will apply as you go across the screen there for each school. Please I don't mean to be rude at this time, but right now we're not going to accept questions. We will take questions during the breakout sessions. All right, next slide, please. All right, now this slide here is a breakdown of the same format that you saw for the high school. This now is information for our middle schools, individual schools. Once again, the schools are listed alphabetically or going across the screen. As mentioned earlier, as I stated before, that we will see an increase in the number of suspensions for our schools. We're not proud of that, but we are working to address those issues. This right here is the same format as we saw earlier for the high school. This is the middle school rate. We're starting over at the far left side with Northwest Middle Schools, 278 African Americans, 66 Hispanic, and 197 white students. Of those 278 black students from Northwest, 113 individual students. Now, once again, I'm emphasizing the difference between the incidents. It could be multiple students getting one suspension. Then the actual number of students suspended from those incidents is down at the bottom here at the 113. So of the 279 students incidents, 113 of those was individual students. All right, and then you can read it across. All right, the next slide we'll look at is our in-school suspension. And now, as you look at in-school suspension, you will notice that there's a huge decrease in our in-school suspension as we progress from year to year. And there's a reason for that, and I will explain that to you. In-school suspension was back in 15-16 was our only option for as keeping students in school that did not do a zero tolerance offense or wasn't fighting or something of that nature that we could keep in school. We utilized in-school suspension, and we had a total of, I believe that's roughly 2,100 students in in-school suspension in 2015-16. 16, 17, it was 2007, I do believe. And then you see a drastic decrease in 17, 18. And then also a decrease again in 18, 19. And the reason for that decrease is due to the fact we, based on the DEO committee and also changes in Knox County with restorative practices and new practices being implemented, we installated the Restorative Learning Center. Therefore, that showed a decrease in our in-school suspension, and we will show you those numbers in the next slide. All right, so once again, those same 2 years, 17, 18 and 18, 19, you see 17, 18, restorative center. We had roughly, I believe that's 1,400 students. And we were sharing that some students was going to restorative centers. Some students were still using ISS at that time. And then 18, 19 in our high school, we had like 21 something. Once again, an increase because those ISS students was now going to the restorative center instead of going to ISS. And Ms. Cook will come up and explain the difference between ISS and the Restorative Learning Center when she gets up to do her presentation. That's the high school side. Then over on the middle school side, you see the same trend, whereas there's an increase from, I believe that's 908 students in Restorative Center, and then it jumped up to 2,000 in 18-19 in Restorative Center. Next slide, please. All right, the next slide shows you an illustration of the most, or the top 5, not the most, but the top offenses that our students are committing in our schools that's causing us to, causing schools to suspend, place in ISS, place in Restorative Center. And as we look at these things, I ask that you think about, prior to going to our breakout sessions, based on these 5 things that we've have listed up here, what can we do from the school system to families to you all as community advocates and concerns to help us address these issues? It's difficult for us to reduce suspensions when students are still coming to school fighting. It's difficult for us to reduce suspension rates and keep students out of restorative and ISS if students are still coming to school under the influence or failing to follow the zero tolerance state law zero tolerance policy. Those are things that we cannot. Those 2 things we cannot control, as far as students with falling under the zero tolerance policy. And the zero tolerance policy in Knox County deals with 4 different things: bringing fireworks, incendiary devices to school, assault and battery on a staff member, possession, use, or distribution of a illegal drug, or possession of a firearm. Those are state mandated guidelines that school officials, school principals, administrators don't have an option based on state law. That student is required to receive a punishment of no less than 180 days calendar year out of school. And by state law, only one person can modify that, and that will be the superintendent of schools. Understand that every suspension 5 days or more in our system can be appealed, and in the appeal process, the appeal comes before me, and then if whatever decision I make, if the parent or school administrator is not satisfied, content with that decision, they still have a right to go on and appeal to the superintendent. And then if not satisfied with the superintendent's decision, they still have a right to go before the Board of Education for an appeal. All right. Okay, thank you, John. Keep me on track, please. All right, once again, looking at our high schools, our 5 most reason for out-of-school suspension, 5 days or more. 5 days or more. We look at this once again. You look at fighting, 192 incidents. The next would be possession, use, or distribution of illegal substance or prescription drugs on school grounds, assault of a student, 39, and then the last one over here, I believe that's 45, is disruption of class or school environment. And that subject there, that category there, that item there is something that, as I go out, Mr. Thomas mentioned to y'all earlier that I'm meeting with principals and things like that. We're trying to get a grip on that area so that not that it's uniformed across the county, but more so that we get an idea of what that looks like at each school. Now, it's not the fact that we're suspending kids for disruption of class or a school environment for not bringing pencils to school. That's not acceptable. And just based on different cultural aspects of our kids, the perception of being disrespectful or showing an attitude or something of that nature from different kids looks differently throughout the county. What Mr. Thomas may consider being disrespect, me at Gresham Middle School, forgive me, Donna, if you're in the house, but I'm going to say Gresham may not look the same. So therefore, we want to make sure that the schools and the administrators understand that I want to word this right, that there's a difference between attitude and looking for clarification and understanding. And don't always jump to the conclusion that just because a person don't agree with you or see things the way you see them, that's necessary disrespect or an attitude towards you. All right, this next slide is a breakdown of the demographic groups here in Knox County and the number of middle and high school students suspended at least one day out of school from those different demographics. And then to understand the percentage of that demographic, we have a cheat sheet or a help page in the back that shows you what percentage from each school makes up that demographic. We have it here for the high school, and then the next page will be the breakdown for our middle schools. Once again, as Ms. Delaney mentioned, we will have a breakout session. If you have questions at that time, I will address those questions and concerns. Thank you all.
Good evening. I'm Janice Cook, and as it's been stated, I am the Director of School Culture, the new department within Knox County Schools. So if you don't know me, you'll know by now that I'm not from around here, although I have lived in Knoxville longer than I lived in Scotland, so when people ask me where I'm from, I'm kind of torn as to what my answer is. But thank you for coming. We appreciate your support, and we look forward to your feedback. This really has been a year of growth for us in Knox County Schools when the opportunity arose for us to be able to create this Department of School Culture. We talked a little bit about the things that we cover, but actually we support programs, 26 programs within the district. But tonight we're going to focus on the programs that are about behaviour support and the work to address disparities. On the screen, you'll see the three structures we operate under. We have preventative, we have consequence, and we have restoration. The most of our work in school culture goes on in the first and the last. We do a lot of work in preventative and being proactive, and then after students have been out of school for suspension, we come in and do restorative work. In that first section, in the preventative or proactive group, we have programs that we have implemented. Across the district, we have different programs in different schools, sometimes multiple programs in different schools. But what we're going to do is we are continually working to provide streams of support for our students. Just recently, there was a change in the law. And the law said that we need to, when we are working with children, we need to be able to look at trauma and their behaviors. So when we're working with students, and we're working with students who are experiencing dysregulation of behavior, we now really have to stop and ask ourselves if trauma is impacting them. Currently, we have 41 schools in Knox County that are trauma-informed schools. They have been through the trauma training. So that's almost half of our schools. We also have 7 schools that have been designated as trauma-informed schools by the state. These schools have received additional trainings and supports, and they work very closely with students and addressing their trauma needs. If you go to the state's website, they actually highlight us in Knox County, specifically Dogwood, as one of the schools that is a model for trauma-informed practices. So the premise is that we have to work with students and we have to look at them, and when they're having these issues, we have to stop. And instead of saying, what is the matter with you? We have to stop and reflect and say, what has happened to you that you have chosen this type of behavior? So it causes us as the adults to actually intervene and think through what is going on with the student rather than just giving them a consequence. As Mr. Thomas talked about, we have to address cultural competency. If we're going to impact disparities, we have to look at implicit bias. We have to look at the structures for cultural competency. And we had our last, the phase 1 section of this program, we had a lot of trainings across the district. We trained every site in implicit bias and other cultural issues. But the reality is, if we want to make a difference, we need to have cultural competency be part of what we do every day. We need to go into situations in a culturally responsive way. To that end, we made the decision that we need to hire people who get up in the morning and say, how am I going to impact and support the students and staff of Knox County today? How am I going to impact the disparities that we have? So, as Mr. Thomas said, we hired Jay Butler as our first cultural facilitator. She's already started doing trainings. She's met with principals and, sitting down and looking at their suspensions, looking at the disparities, sitting down and saying, okay, where is our problem and where can we come in and support? So, if we're going to move the needle for disparities, we've got to continue to address the issue both from a systemic place and individuality. So she's also going to, as we move forward, we're going to be looking at using a research method to address both these issues, the systemic and the individualized. We're going to be working on, do we have culturally responsive pedagogy and academics? Does every student feel like they belong in Knox County schools, in their classroom? Are they connected? Then we are really committed to identifying and dismantling the structures that create disparities in that systemic structure. And then we need to acknowledge, celebrate, and address our diversity. We have a large diversity in Knox County, and we need to celebrate our diversities. Another program that, again, Mr. Tom, he kind of took my speech, but so another thing is the PBIS, the Positive Behavior Interventions and Supports. The first two things I talked about, the cultural competency and the trauma-informed is really teacher knowledge. It's the adults. They have to have that knowledge as they move into work with students. The next couple of programs that we implement is about student skill. So we use PBIS. This teaches skills. People have the misnomer that it's about that store that you get on a Friday and you go and get a little trinket or a sticker or whatever. That may happen. But what PBIS does, it says, this is the expectation, this is how you do it. We teach you the skill of how you meet our expectations, and you're rewarded if we get to that place, individually, as a class, and sometimes as a school. It looks different in an elementary school. In a high school, you may have a food truck on a Friday. Elementary school, that wouldn't work so much. So you may have a closet where you can get a spider ring. But rewarding students for doing what is right and following the expectations is really about what a PBIS is all about. But it's really important that we can regulate our emotions. We have a lot of kids who are dysregulated at this point for a variety of different reasons. So we have to teach social and personal competencies. And the state has actually realized this in that they have changed what counselors have to do. Counselors now are required to do direct social skills and emotional instruction. That's a big change from 5 or 10 years ago. So we teach about emotions, how to handle your emotions, to recognize your emotions, and then how to function in society, how to function in the world, the classroom that you're in. You have to teach those skills. So we look at social emotional competencies. We talked about restorative practices. Restorative practices is really that overarching. It's the program that kind of jumps from the first to the last one of these and umbrellas. Restorative practices also is misunderstood. You know, if punishment alone would correct behaviors, we wouldn't have discipline issues. We kind of know as a society how to punish. It doesn't work. So what we have to do is we have to pull back and balance accountability with consequence, skill building, and then restoration. So that's what restorative practices does. It takes a lot of different forms, but restorative practice teaches relationship building. If you don't have anything to restore, if you don't have a relationship and feel that you belong in the classroom or you are important, you don't want to restore anything. You really don't care. So it's really about starting off about restoring relationships and then developing the community within the group. It then teaches you how to live in that space with others. Then it holds you accountable. When things haven't gone so well and you have made some poor choices, you're accountable for that. You're accountable for the hurt or the damage that you have caused. And we teach you how to repair that. So we have different implementation levels in our schools, but we are working so that we can have that, so that every school has a restorative umbrella under which we operate in Knox County schools. As we said, we had restorative learning centres. That was one of the things we put in a few years ago. We put in a structure. We need to continue working to see what that structure and how we can implement that structure most effectively. But the reality is, and I have heard Mr. Thomas say this many times, we will have order in our schools. There will be times when students are suspended. But if you think about it like someone who is struggling to read, if you had a student in your class who was struggling to read and you just put them outside the door in the hallway and brought them back in 2 days later, Are you going to expect them to be able to read at that point when you haven't intervened at all? No. That's really what we need to do. It's that part of bringing back in and teaching what the underlying expectations are and help the child work out and work with the child so that they have the skills to be able to function successfully. This is a lot of work that we have to do and that we must do, support skill building in our students. We need to provide students the opportunity to learn and be accountable for their behavior. But we as the staff need to be open to and be willing to check our blind spots. That's how we'll be able to support our students. All of us have blind spots, whether it's a blind spot that is created through trauma, through economic status, through special education, language, or culture. We as teachers need to be all the time recognizing we have blind spots and checking them in our practice. So, in closing, while we seek to celebrate the uniqueness of each child and the journey that they are on, we also must recognize as teachers and administrators that we partner to be the guardrails that keeps our students on the road to a productive education. Each student's journey is different, but they all need our support, especially if they are veering off the road and is headed somewhere that does not enrich their lives. So what we ask of you, partner with us. Partner with us to be those guardrails that keep the children on the right road, because we believe that every day, every child matters.
Okay, I am Tammy Campbell, and this is Sue OMB, and we are the Ombudsman Office. Thought it was like a lot of people, but it's really just me and Sue. But we are very proud to hold that opportunity and work in this capacity. And as the Ombudsman Office, we serve as a resource for students, for families, and for staff to resolve issues, help address concerns and complaints through mediation and education. Another function of our office is, as we resolve issues and address concerns, we use that data, we use that input, we use your voices to help elevate things to the right ears, whether that's the superintendent, whether that's a supervisor, a departmental executive, or sometimes a principal or a teacher, or sometimes it could just also be to another student. Some of the things that we have been able to do since our office was established, which was in 2017, we were hired in the spring of 2017. One of the things is the Ombudsman Office and its place in the complaint and appeals to the school board was added to Policy B-171. And one of the things we made sure that it was very accessible, because it is there for stakeholders, is that no matter what place you engage our offices, we'll make sure you get to the right place and walk you through and support you through that process as we get your issue resolved and dealt with. You can submit a request for assistance over the internet, on our website, through an ombudsman service request, or you can call us on the phone, or you can send us an email, or you can just ask face-to-face. We take them any way we need to take them, and try our very best to be as accommodating and accessible as possible. To date, and the number is ever changing, as of Monday, actually, we have handled a little over 530 inquiries since our office has been established, and that would include both all district. I pretty much take the lead on things that are non-special ed related, and Sue leads as the special ed specialist person. With her expertise, she takes lead on matters that fall into that category. And so on the handout, we couldn't get it all on the slide, but on the handout, try to provide you just some examples of some of the themes and types of inquiries that we handle a lot of. And they range from transfers to transportation concerns, oftentimes parent and administration communication, helping to be a bridge and a facilitator for that to be more productive. Just guidance a lot of times on just how to handle certain things or who should they talk to. Staff concerns that may come up in a building, and we work very closely with folks as well as human resources to get those matters addressed. Safety and school concerns, school security concerns that may come up. As I said, special ed, IEP, 504, compliance and support related to implementation of a plan. Discipline outcomes and suspensions, often asked many times, was process followed? Was due process followed? We look into situations and investigate to make sure our policies and procedures were followed, both for all parties involved, not just for the school side, but from the child's side as well, and making sure that people have been heard. Bullying, harassment, whether it's racial discriminatory type things, harassment can take on some other categories as well, dealing with civility concerns and reporting practices. Also, with sometimes when things have to go to another level, we look into those as well to make sure that we follow things appropriately. And access to not just Knox County resources, but also community resources and social services within our city and county. We get a lot of calls, especially around certain peak times and seasons, around I need clothes, I need help with my utility bill, I need help with housing. And although we can't always supply those, of course, as a school system, but we have people within our schools as well as other community resources that we make referrals to. Jeannie's telling me to wrap it up. I'm going to wrap it up, Jeannie. I'm going to get it. Brian took more time than he was supposed to take, but that's okay. But I'm going to work with it. Also, as a result, as we said, there have been some things that we've listened to community, to stakeholders. And as a result of a lot of our work, we have been able to help work through some other improvements in our school district. Which is a couple of years ago, we went to a transfer form revision after some work there. Transportation and customer service responses, working with that department. Curriculum enhancements that reflect diversity and more cultural competency. Welcome Center. I work very closely with Sharon Kate, her team that helps serve as a resource in education for new families to Knox County schools, specifically our ELL and SPED families. Also, we've helped work through and heard your voices around student visit days when they're transitioning from elementary to middle and middle to high. Spanish translations and communications for Knox County schools when we have messages. We have now Facebook pages in multiple languages. We have our messages that go out around school closure and mass messaging that is in Spanish and in English, and continuing to cultivate that to make sure that we're accommodating and inclusive for all of our families. Revisions of kindergarten report cards and ever changing and always looking at Aspen and how the family portal and academic monitoring can be improved. We also I facilitate the Family Advisory Council, which has representation from our whole district. And we have a Student Advisory Council that's also has student representation from the high schools that also give us information. And Sue facilitates a Parent Advisory Council specifically for parents of students that receive special education services. And then lastly, we also work very closely with cultural competency, restorative practices, our trauma-informed and provide training and parent workshops as requested by schools or community on various topics that really help to empower our parents. And ultimately in our office, our roles are, we take them very seriously. We are very dedicated to those and want to make sure that we always provide a safe place for your voices to be heard and your issues and concerns to be addressed, because we do this because it truly is about our children, and we're all team for successful students. And we want to make sure that you feel comfortable, that you feel that your information is confidential, because it is. And we want to work together and be collaborative in doing what is very best for our children in Knox County schools.
All right, I'm going to make this very quick because we do want to protect your chance to provide feedback. So for those of you who would like to interact more around discipline, you will be staying here in the auditorium. And come toward the front, but don't move yet. Nobody move yet. If you want to hear more about school culture, you're going to go upstairs to the library. And you'll be with Janice Cook and some of her folks. If you want to hear more about student supports, particularly special ed, ELL, all the things that Jason oversees, go back to the lobby. There is a hallway of classrooms. Look for the yellow sign that says room number 1. And if you want to hear more about the Ombudsman's initiatives and office, then down that same hall, and there will be people to direct you. You'll be looking for the yellow sign, room number 2. Now, you're going to have a little less than 30 minutes. At 7:20, we want you moving back to the auditorium just for a few more minutes of final comments. Go fast. All right, you're in charge. Okay, you all, most people are back, so we want to respect your time and conclude here just real quickly. Again, I just want to remind you that all the notes will be typed up and posted on our website, hopefully within the next couple of days at www.knoxschools.org/DEO. So you'll be able to go on there and find your comments as well as everyone else's. And also, if you want to watch this presentation again, the PowerPoint will also be on the website. But if you just sort of want to see yourself on TV tonight, it will be at our KCS TV YouTube channel. And so I will turn it back over to the superintendent to conclude our evening. And thanks again for coming. Great turnout.
Thank you, Jenny. Oh, great input tonight. Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate you. We're looking to get better. I hope the folks that presented, I hope you can just see that in the folks that presented that, hey, we want to do a better job. We want to make sure that all of our students have the very best educational opportunities that we can provide for them so they can go on to college or career, military, wherever it is they want to go. We want to be sure we prepare them. And you can help us. There are more disparities than discipline. There are reading disparities. There's disparities at the ACT test. At ready graduates, there are just disparities up and down the line when you look at the subgroups, and I talk subgroups: economically disadvantaged, English language learners, students with disabilities, African American, Hispanic, Native American students. So we want everybody performing at that high level. But your input's invaluable tonight. Thank you so much for being here. We want to be respectful and mindful of your time. And, if you've got children in the school, reading proficiency, read. Also, it's pretty simple, too. I mean, just want all students to be where they're supposed to be at the time they're supposed to be there, doing what they're supposed to be doing. And if that happens, then we're going to see a lot better results in our data. Too. So I know students behave. Some of them come to school already knowing how to behave. Others of them don't. We're trying our best, and Janice is doing her best in her department to make sure that we teach our kids how to behave, those that are misbehaving. So thank you so much for being here this evening. Drive safely, be careful, and we'll have another meeting and sometime in the future here and get back together and get more input. Thank you.